Many seasons ago in a land far, far away, the gateway between the lands of men and the underworld opened, and both the living and the dead were able to travel between both worlds. Although this was only allowed under special circumstances and short visits, that open gate created many opportunities for the living and the dead to interact. They did business together, partied together, and even played sports together. But as in many places, this created bitter rivalry between both worlds and led to fierce competitions and games between them. One of which was the Gidibo, a wrestling match between the champions of the living and the dead. After each tournament, the final winner will be hosted by the losing side, as a sign of mutual respect and continued balance between them. Now it happened that after many of such tournaments, Oa, the land of the living, had gotten many more victories than Anemo, the land of the dead. This shamed and infuriated the Anemoras, most especially their king, Ezemo, who vowed to let the previous tournament be the last Oa would ever win. In preparation for the coming Gidibo, Ezemo searched all through the underworld, through all its history and ages, and found the best wrestlers who had already passed into Anemo. They were to be headed by his own heir, Ezemo. In Oa, however, after many rounds of trials and contests, a few young men were chosen to be led by their best fighter, Agu, the son of Amotekun. Agu was fondly called the Tiger by his peers, as he was known for his bravery, stamina, and the fact that he was the one wrestler who never landed on his back. When the appointed time came, all the competitors and spectators from both sides headed to Ala. Ala was a no man's land. It was a bordering territory between Oa and Anemo, a transit gate between the living and the dead. Ala was about a square mile, long and narrow. It was typically dry and dusty, but once a year, on the day of the Gidibo, Ala transformed to a beautiful grassland to commemorate the tournament. It teemed with life and death as the living mingled with the dead from the underworld. By law, no fighting or conflict was permitted, and lawbreakers were punished by the Emirs, who were always ubiquitously close by to ensure the peace. Emirs were young boys and girls that were granted the right of free passage between both worlds. They could travel at will and served at the pleasure of Chianyincha, the supreme deity that governed both the living and the dead. Without much ado, the tournament began. Obanje, head of the Emirates, and Chianyincha's envoy to both Oa and Anemo rose and addressed the arena.
My fellow dwellers,
He started. The crowd responded.
At this appointed time, we have gathered to partake in this important ritual that signifies our shared experience. For what is life without death? Can he die who has not lived? Is he truly alive who cannot die? Let us fellowship in our shared destiny. For the one comes from the other, and the one must go to the other. Let us fellowship in our shared existence. For to live is to die, and to die is to have lived.
To live is to die, the living responded. To die is to have lived, the dead replied. Gidibo's rules were simple. No physical weapons were allowed. No hitting of any kind was allowed. To slam your opponent flat on his back was the only requirement. This was an agreed upon conclusion to a matter in both realms. However, the competitors were allowed to use tricks to manipulate their opponents. They wore charms and anklets and bracelets and used incantations and chants with which they whispered confusion and distraction and fear and self-judgment and much more into their opponents. Anything to gain the upper hand and improve one's chances. However, all tricks and their resulting effects had to last no longer than a match. Lasting effects of physical damage was not allowed on the penalty of equibe, an eternal banishment to nowhere. Everyone obeyed these rules. The balance between Owa and Animo was crucial to both realms and to Chianyincha herself. In this Gidibo, everyone obeyed. Everything went well. For the final match, and as expected by everyone from both realms, Agul, the son of Amutetu, faced off against Wezemo, Ezemo's heir. For 2 straight days they battled, reaching, pushing, tugging and maneuvering, using every allowable trick to outdo the other. But finally, Agul prevailed, and once again, Anemo lost the battle. Laurels were given to the deserving, and the fanfare came to an end. Agul then bade his family farewell for the time being and departed with the Animoras under the protection of Abanje and the Emirates. The final crossing into Animo occurred sooner than he thought. He had expected to walk some distance, but no. Animo began from the very next step they took in that direction. He realized what other travelers had talked about. Animo is indeed closer than you think, as close as the next breath you take. It happened like a movie, fading from one scene to the next. The crossing and all of Anemo looked grey and melancholic. Looking around, he knew there were different colors and shades to the Anemoras and the structures he saw. Yet everything carried a heavy grey tint to it that made its original color unrecognizable. It looked just like home, like Uwa, only grey and dead. The sun above cast rays that seemed uncertain. He wasn't sure if this was the first sighting of a rising sun or the last sighting of a setting sun. For some reason, he knew the sun will never rise or set, and it will stay right in that spot for all eternity. He didn't know how he got to know that, but he knew he was right. Obanje saw the look on his face and knew he had questions.
Not everyone gets the opportunity to make this journey. Your friends back home will have a lot of questions for you.
I don't understand.
You have questions? Ask.
It feels like death here.
It is the land of the dead, is it not? Does it feel out of character for you?
Makes sense. But this feeling doesn't sit right with me.
That's because you are not of this realm, yet.
So the Anemoras don't carry this feeling I'm having? Do they like it here? What are the reviews?
The dead have transcended. The concerns of the living mean nothing to them. Passing is neither a good nor a bad thing. It just is.
When they arrived in Guala, the Izemo's palace, the king greeted him warmly and welcomed him to Anemo. Beside him was his heir Wezemo and his daughter Adamo. He noted mentally that Adamo must have been exceptionally beautiful while alive, but beauty is of the flesh, and flesh is for the living. In the banquet hall, Agul looked around curiously, as some of the dead amongst whom he was were very curious to behold. They looked and wore attires from different ages and ethnicities past. Some certainly died peacefully, but some looked diseased while some clearly died violently. He saw a young ancient Viking with an arrow still in his chest, a woman with a swollen head as if she died of strangulation, and another man with his head floating just above his neck.
You stayed the way you died for all eternity?
Agul whispered to Obanje.
The story ends how it ends.
To commence the ceremony, Obanja once again arose to deliver his speech.
My fellow dwellers,
He started.
My fellow dweller,
The crowd responded.
at this point, we have gathered to partake in this important ritual that signifies our shared existence, and here sits the victor amongst you, as mandated by Chianincha. For what is life without death? Can he die who has not lived? Is he truly alive who cannot die? Let us fellowship in our shared destiny, for one comes from the other, and the one must go to the other. Let us fellowship in our shared existence, for to live is to die, and to die is to have lived.
To die is to have lived.
to live is to die.
Tikkun, one of the emirates, presented him with an aho, a bionic skin. What is this for?
It is your Husna attire. The dead have need for neither food, drink, nor any pleasure the living occupy themselves with. For you to be entertained in the way of war, you need that skin. It's an interface or a driver you install to experience this place.
He understood and wore the skin. And yes, it gave his taste buds the ability to enjoy anymore. All his favorite meals were made, and they all tasted absolutely delicious, just the way his mother made them. He ate alone, aware of all the watching eyes and trying not to be shy. Curiosity got the best of him too, as he looked around the crowd, wondering if he might recognize someone. He didn't.
Is it possible to see maybe my relatives, ancestors?
Which one? Are we not all connected?
How do you mean?
Your mother is no more responsible for your being born than your great-grandfather or even to 1,000 generations before you. Besides, that question is forbidden.
Who are these faint-looking ones? They seem to be somewhat transparent.
Those are the living.
The living? Other travelers?
No, they are not travelers, they are still alive.
So, how are they here?
They are dead, everyone is dead.
What do you mean?
Ago was so confused.
Eat your meal.
At the end of the ceremony, he was ushered to his chamber to retain the aho for a good night's sleep in the manner of Owa. But in secret, Ezemo complained bitterly to Obanje, and Namor was losing too many tournaments, and he pressured Obanje to speak to Chianincha about the rules.
The rules of the Gidibo are set and cannot be changed. Why should I tempt the wrath of Chianincha by such petitions?
While the rules do not change, how do we address the changing abilities of the living? All their innovations and healthcare. How do we level the playing fields? We too need other measures.
Respectfully, Ezemo, life nowhere is but a brief and fleeting moment. Why do you concern yourself with rules that have always been set?
I am no longer satisfied. You think you can make a fool of me? Tournament after tournament, I keep hosting these living things.
Living things? You too lived once, and to live is to die.
Yes, and to die is to have lived. But what are we to do now? The living things have tilted the scales against us. No more. I will have measures.
If you lay a hand on that man, it could trigger an epidemic among the living which will be devastating. Only Chianincha can tilt the scale in such a manner. Remember that.
I most certainly do. And the dead forget nothing, Obanje. You remember that. Besides, Chianincha uses both the living and the dead for her good pleasure. Who decides who she has chosen and who she has not?
Obanje knew death was hard to negotiate with, and chose not to try.
Do as you wish. Chianincha will settle all matters.
He stated and stormed out. In his sleep, Ago touched and turned from his many nightmares. Many times he woke up panting and sweating. By the last nightmare, he jumped awake again, and this time, still lying on the bed, he saw someone sitting at the far corner of his chamber, This person was transparent like those he had asked about earlier, and also had his face. Somehow he knew this other person he was looking at was himself. He wondered if it was just a look-alike.
Who are you?
I am you.
Am I dead?
Yes, I am.
What? Izemo killed me?
No, if he will, he hasn't done it yet.
So what are you, what am I doing over there?
We're all dead. Everyone is dead.
What does that mean?
Dead Argo stares at him for a while and raised the paper with a circle and a dot at its center. You see this circle? It represents life.
How?
Time is like a circle with a dot in the middle. It's infinite in both directions. Every point on the circle connects directly to that dot. That's how the afterlife and all its eternity is directly connected to every point in that circle. Your existence is but a less than brief and fleeting moment in the gap between eternity past and the eternity in the future. It's unending and keeps going. So from our point of view, everything that will ever happen has already happened. Your existence is just the period of the time that is being witnessed.
So how does this concern me right now?
You only get to see me if our timeline is about to connect to me.
Meaning I'm about to die and you're here to warn me?
Death is neither good nor bad, Justice. I only explain for your understanding because you have asked me.
English!
Yes, you are about to die. Argo heard a heavy thud, like something big fell from the sky. In that instant, dead Argo drew closer to him. He heard the thud again, this time closer, and dead Argo again drew closer to him, now about 10 feet away. He knew death was about to take him. He went to the window and peeped.
What in the world is that?
The Ofuku, they are the keepers of the realm, Anima's official punisher of souls. The Ofuku was one-legged and hideous, 8 feet of pure muscle mass. It looked like a flayed muscular man who had dried out in the hot sun for all of eternity. It had a dark grey complexion, much darker than the normal tone in Animo. His eyes were sinister and full of hate. It ground its teeth, and it made a loud piercing sound even the dead found disturbing. Their eyes locked, and Argo saw it take another big hop with its one leg and landed much closer. Argo looked at his dead self in apprehension and was startled to find him right behind him. He ran, dashing out of his chamber without a second thought. Dead Argo chased after him. Argo saw him chasing and paused to ask for help. I'm not here to help, I'm only as close to you to merge with your timeline. Argo sprinted away again. He knew the moment he got outside the boundaries of the palace grounds, he would already be at the crossing into Ala. Life was indeed a breath away. The Ofuku's claws just missed him as he exited the palace. He jumped right into the crossing, but not before the Ofuku was able to catch up. It stretched out its long, sinewy, dead, muscular hand and struck him on the back, leaving Argo with a gash that stretched all his back. The Ofuku's strike sickened him as its venom quickly filled his system. Unable to support him, his legs gave way and he crumbled to the ground. Still determined not to die, and with every ounce of energy he could muster, he crawled on all fours and kept crawling. But the crossing took so long. Was life and death not supposed to be just a breath away? But alas, he would remain trapped in the crossing for as long as he was close to death, as the venom flowing through his body kept him. He wondered if he should accept his fate, but he had a family back home and they would be devastated. He vowed once more to survive. Looking back, he could still see the Ofuku standing on its one leg at the border of Animo, its hateful face blurred out by the dust. Much closer to him inside the crossing was his dead self. Clearly their timelines were still close. Suddenly Argo yelled out,
Chanincha! 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 Izemo has betrayed us all and has threatened the peace. I have done right by the realms and I demand justice. Chanincha! Where are your standards? I demand justice.
He heard it. Chanincha's messenger had come to his aid. The venom in you has joined the fight. You are Oa's champion, are you not? Agu closed his eyes and focused, chanting and incanting, speaking unintelligible words. Suddenly, his eyes lit up like fire. Within the dusty crossing, he began to see them. The invisible emeries, who lived and played permanently within the crossing, gathered around him. He made his case to the emeries about the Ezemo and his Ofuku who had been sent after him. Then, the fire in his eyes began to dim as the eyes of the emeries all caught fire. Eyes blaring and teeth gnashing. They all ran toward the dead Agu and pushed him all the way back into Anemo. The Ofuku hopped away in flight as they approached. The fight was over. He had won. The fever left him and he was finally able to walk on his feet again. Happy, he headed back toward the sunlight at Aala. Now it was truly a breath away, and he made it. These Amos' actions had indeed brought devastating consequences, though his survival and return had caused the epidemic to finally cease. Ago had been trapped in the crossing for 2 years. He knew what he must do. Ezemo will pay for his crimes, he vowed. This is just the beginning.